Hey everybody, this is Erica, the technology nerd who likes to film stuff, and before me I have the Xperia Z5 Premium. Now this has taken me a little bit of time to get my hands on, but I still want to review it. I am most interested in that 4K display. I'm all about displays and calibration, so I wanted to give my take on it, and then I also wanted to talk about some other choice topics. So I want to review this a little bit, and when I'm done reviewing it, I want to give this away. So I have to thank D-Brand so much for sending this out to me so that I can review this and give it away. It's going to be an international giveaway. Please stay tuned on my channel for this. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Hopefully I can help you decide if this is the phone for you or if you just think that this is all hype. So let's go ahead and check it out. So I've been using this phone for pretty much over a month now, kind of coming up on that 2-month mark. So I've been using this pretty faithfully. I've got a real feel for it. Of course, my main objective is to talk about what it's like to use a 4K smartphone, at least 4K as it applies to this smartphone. But there's some other things I'd like to touch base on first real quick before we get into that. Just as a note, if you guys don't know, the Xperia Z5 is now available inside of the United States. You can get it from Sony's website, but you will not get the fingerprint sensor. But you guys are not going to be at any loss for this fingerprint sensor because this thing sucks. Sometimes this fingerprint sensor works really well, and sometimes it just does not want to work whatsoever. It gets really ornery. Not exactly sure why that is, but when you wipe off the fingerprint sensor, it seems to improve the performance. But most of the time, this thing's like, no, screw you. What are you talking about? I'm not going to unlock. And you have to punch in your PIN. So that is quite annoying. I haven't seen a fingerprint sensor that bad. So let's take a little bit of a look around the phone. I want to give my take on just what I think about the build and the feel and the look of this. I have to say that I really like this. I know that the Xperia Z5 has an aluminum frame where this one has a stainless steel one instead, and I'm really loving stainless steel. My LG V10 also has stainless steel on the rails on the side, and I just like how it looks, like how it feels. This phone also has some nice heft to it. It does feel nice and premium. This comes in a couple of different color combinations. I have the chrome one here that has a mirror finish on the back. Then there's also a gold and a black one, which are not as mirror-like this one. I think that this is the prettiest of them, honestly, but a lot of people are not going to like looking at themselves on the back and having it mirror their face back at them. For me, it's made a nice vanity mirror, I have to admit. Making sure you don't have any boogers in your nose, bats in the cave, that type of thing. Making sure you don't have anything in your teeth, especially because I'm a huge fan of blueberries. It works really well for that. So if you're not a fan of having a mirror on the back, you can get a skin like this one. This is from D-Brand. They actually sent me several different samples for me to look at. They do have a stainless steel looking option. This is a brushed stainless steel looking option. So at least you can keep the colors with the whole motif of the phone. And this is just helping keep this a little bit more durable, keep it from scratches. So if you're curious to check these out, check out the link in the description. I have to thank them especially because they have made this video possible, and also they're making it possible to give this device away. So I give them props. In terms of durability, I have heard some people saying that this phone can bend. Just about every phone these days I've seen has their specific bending points. This has not bent for me, and I've been carrying this around for 2 months. I don't think that most people are going to have a problem. But just letting you know that I did at least see that once or twice. This is rated IP65-68 for dust tight and also water resistant for down to 1 meter for a half hour. You can see that the part on the bottom is open, so you no longer have those annoying flaps. There's only one flap on this entire phone. This one flap is where you have your SD card that is housed and also your SIM card. So Sony does indeed talk about its water resistant rating, but they never recommend that you drop this in water. I tried it out myself and didn't have any issues whatsoever. But anyhow, looking around the rest of the phone, we have that fingerprint sensor, which I loathe entirely. We have a volume rocker. We have our 2-step camera button, so you can execute the camera by pressing on it. You can press down on it to focus, and if you press down once more, it's going to execute and take that picture. So I really like having this available here. Then on the bottom, we have our micro USB charging port. This does have fast charging. So this is Qualcomm Quick Charge 2.0. We have a lanyard hole. You see we have these little bumper parts on the side here. It's supposed to help with drops. I really like that laser etched Xperia inside of this frame here. Then as I showed you, got this little flap that houses your SIM card and your SD card slot. On the top you have a standard headphone jack, you have a microphone. On the front we have a 5.1 megapixel front-facing camera, f2.4 aperture lens. You have your ambient light and proximity sensor. And also on the front we have these front-facing stereo speakers. Unfortunately, this is how it's been since I've tried out many of these Xperia phones that have front-facing speakers. They just don't sound very good. They're not very loud. In comparison to other phones that have front-facing stereo speakers, these just are not so good. To me, they sound a little bit muffled. Then on the back, we have a single LED flash. We also have a 23 megapixel camera, f2.0 lens. It's an overall really nice looking package and feels really nice in the hand. Whoops, the thing's running out of battery power. Now as for a smidge on specs and performance, as this is plugged in, this has Quick Charge 2.0. We have the Snapdragon 810 SoC inside of this. So you have an octa-core CPU, you have 4 higher powered cores, those are the A57s clocked at 2 GHz, and then the 4 lower powered A53s clocked at 1.5 GHz, the Adreno 430 GPU, 3 GB of RAM, 32 GB of internal storage, and of course you have the SD card slot here, so it is expandable. If you're going to be taking a lot of 4K video and viewing those 4K videos on this display, it's useful to have an SD card. Now performance-wise, it seems to be running just as well as any other Snapdragon 810 device that I have played with in my experience. Running some benchmarks against my Nexus 6P, the only real difference I see is that because this display is only rendering things at 1080p, you're getting better performance graphics-wise than on the Nexus 6P, which is rendering Quad HD resolution. You're only getting 4K underneath video content and picture content for this. So underneath games, you're not rendering 4K, you're not rendering Quad HD, it's only 1080p, so that does show up for performance. An annoying thing I notice about performance, at least underneath the camera, is that this device gets very, very hot. It gets hot enough to where the camera will shut down the application when you are recording video. So I'm able to record about 7-8 minutes of 4K video before the device says, oh, too hot, and shuts down. Some people are getting less than that. Some people are able to record 4K video for 3 minutes and the application then forces close. So this is certainly one of the hotter devices that I have played with, but I think that overall performance is pretty good. I don't have too much to complain about except for that overheating issue. The interface mostly feels snappy. It's very similar to stock Android Lollipop. I hear that we're going to be getting an upgrade soon for Marshmallow. I'm not sure exactly when that is. So now I'd like to move on to talking about the star player and the very point of this phone, which is this 4K display. Let's roll out some specs here. We have a 5.5-inch display, 806 pixels per inch, which is insane. Most people are not going to be able to tell any difference whatsoever. This is also an LCD display. But to the right eye, this looks astounding. When looking at 4K content that you can actually get a hold of, such as videos or images that you can view inside of Sony's apps, the images simply leap off the screen with no discernible pixels. It almost feels like you're experiencing the content in real life. But unfortunately, being able to actually get a hold of 4K content and view it is a bit sparse. So I realized that Lollipop does not support 4K. And also, Sony has decided to have this run 1080p most of the time. So from applications to the interface, most things are only being rendered at 1080p. I would have liked it if there was some setting underneath the display settings that I could go underneath and say, hey, I would like to have Quad HD resolution, for example, but you don't have that option. Sony has fixed it for most of the time at 1080p. So keeping those things in mind, such as Android not supporting 4K within Lollipop, and also Sony deciding to keep this most of the time at 1080p, why in the world would I like a 4K display like this? And that's what I wanted to talk about for experience. I have to say that I am someone who is an eagle eye. I can discern pixels. I wish I didn't have the ability to discern pixels the way that I do, but I do. So what I really like about this is that even though this is only rendering 1080p most of the time, I can't see pixels. So this works really well for me, especially because I use the web browser a lot. I read a lot of articles on my phone. I no longer have to see any pixels at all. So I would rather have a 4K display that's rendering 1080p most of the time and not see pixels than to have a 1080p display and see pixels, if that makes any sense. Also, I enjoy using this crazy little contraption. This is called the View XL. I'm able to put my phone into it and look really close up to the screen, and I still am not able to see pixels like I can just say with a lower resolution phone like the iPhone 6s, for example. There is no hatchy appearance with this display, so I can watch movies really up close, I can play games really up close, and I don't have to see any of those pixels as my phone is very, very up close to me. So I'm someone who really likes to view content on my phone, and I think that's who this is going to be for. Also, Sony is working on some type of virtual reality platform, so if you're planning to use a smartphone for virtual reality, having 4K as an option is really, really great. Plus, if you're someone who is a photographer, if you want to go out into the field and just say connect your phone to your DSLR, so just say that you have an application like DSLR controller, you can snap a picture on the DSLR and then it can show up on your display after you've taken that picture and you can see the full resolution. So that's really nice to have. You don't have to go out into the field with a MacBook or a bigger, higher resolution display, for example. So there really are some nice applications for having a display with this many pixels, even though we're not quite there yet in terms of content that's available for this. So the lack of 4K content has made me really curious as to what Sony is doing with this display, and please bear with me. So yes, most of the time everything is at 1080p. Applications are at 1080p. The interface is at 1080p. But what happens, for example, if you click on YouTube? So here I have a 4K video underneath the YouTube application, and you can see that I'm only able to choose 1080p maximum. This phone thinks that it's a 1080p phone. But Sony has done something interesting, and what I did was I plugged this into my computer, I fired up ADB, looked at the logcat, and I could see that when you fire up a video, it doesn't matter if it's a 4K video, or if it's a 1080p video, or whatever it is, as soon as I push play, it goes from the low resolution mode, as shown by logcat, to the high resolution mode. And so what's happened is that this application is now enabled to display 4K content if 4K content is allowed. So once Google updates their application, we should have the ability to watch 4K content inside of YouTube. Sony has already enabled that to happen. So what's happening for right now is that you have the 1080p video that is being upscaled to 4K, and their upscaling algorithm looks really, really nice, so you wouldn't know that this was a 1080p video that's just simply being upscaled. This video looks just as good as it does on a real 1080p display. Plus, when you enable the XReality engine, it refines some of the edges a little bit to where it looks even better, but don't be fooled into thinking that because this is said to upscale to 4K resolution that it's going to look like 4K resolution. You simply can't add back information where it doesn't exist. So take heart that we should have an update to where you can watch 4K video actually underneath YouTube. That's not Sony's fault, believe it or not. Also though, if you go underneath Netflix, so I hit this home button and underneath logcat it says it's back to the low resolution 1080p mode. If I go under Netflix, it's still low resolution mode, but once I hit play underneath Netflix, the high resolution mode kicks in, and if there is 4K content available in this application, it will show 4K content. So again, what we're seeing here is being upscaled to 4K resolution. The same thing goes for Hulu as well. The thing is that even though Netflix has really high resolution content available, it's not optimized for mobile, so you don't have any 4K content available just yet. So that's something that's going to have to happen on Netflix's end. But again, that's not the fault of the phone. So this phone is already ready and capable to view a lot more content than you think in 4K. It just has to catch up now. So whether I'm underneath Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, underneath album or video, that high resolution mode is activated where you can use the 4K display. So in case I lost anybody, let's do a final recap. If you take pictures, you can view them in their fullest resolution. It takes advantage of the 4K display underneath the gallery application. If you take 4K video, you can actually play it back in 4K inside of their video application. This phone has the ability to play back 4K video inside of the YouTube application, but that's going to be on Google's end to catch this up. And we're waiting for optimizations to streaming services like Hulu and Netflix. So where the 4K display is enabled, if there is not 4K content available, it's going to upscale it to the 4K display by their upscaling algorithm, and it looks pretty good for now. It all has to do with the content and the applications that are firing off that content. If you have a lower resolution image inside of the gallery, it's going to upscale it to 4K as well. And everything looks pretty darn nice. Sony does a really great job here. Now, if you want to see what a 4K video from YouTube will look like right now, if you want to have more 4K content available, you can get an application that's called TubeMate. I had to sideload it. Hit download, choose the high-end option. So it's going to download it, and then it's going to have you also download MP3 video converter to convert it, and then you can play it back. You can play it inside of MX Player, for example. You can play it back inside of their video application, and you will be able to see 4K. So I downloaded this one already, for example. And now it's playing in stunning 4K. Can I tell the difference between this and the upscaled version on YouTube? I can tell that there's a little bit more detail here, but most people probably really aren't going to be able to tell. Now, of course, as for talking about how the display looks itself in terms of calibration, as I mentioned, this is an LCD screen. This is a 5.5-inch display. It's also IPS, so the viewing angles are pretty good. Unfortunately, I noticed that this does not get as bright as I would like it to. I got it to max out at about 530 nits for brightness, but they must use some type of dynamic contrast algorithm or something, because most of the time I'm not even getting that much brightness. I'm kind of getting around 400 or so. And it shows when I compare it side by side to another display, so it doesn't get as bright as I would like it to. This is a very wide gamut display. So I took some measurements so I could show what I am looking at. It's not a problem that this display is wide gamut and shows a wide range of colors. It's that we don't have content that is made for this type of a wide gamut display. sRGB content that we have is meant for this range of colors. So if you display it on a display that shows more colors, it's just going to oversaturate them. You can see these points are pushed further. These are the saturation points. So something that's 100% green will be 125, 130% green, for example. Same thing goes for the other ones. So you have a very wide range of colors. Things look saturated. Also, the color temperature of this display is really crazy as well. This is a very cool, very bluish looking display. Whites look very bluish. Right here, I see that they're over 10,500 Kelvin. Sony seems to do this intentionally. They seem to say that the brighter and more vibrant the image, the better that we're going to remember it. So they're trying to create an experience. So if you don't like it being this cool, of course, you can go and mess with the white balance, although I have not been able to get it to look perfect by any means. And once you start messing around with these sliders, it just makes the display even more dim. Blue is the brightest channel. As you punch these ones up, it gets even more dim, unfortunately. So you can see that difference there. So a lot of the time I just leave it on the fully blue mode, but it gives all the colors kind of a bluish cast, unfortunately. The last bad thing that happens when you mess around with these sliders is that the contrast ratio goes down, so blacks aren't going to be as black. But since this is a 4K display with all the bells and whistles, you would think that the calibration would be better. This is a device that is really very much strictly designed for viewing pleasure. So get on the ball, Sony! Now, as for battery life, I have seen that even though we have a 4K display, it doesn't seem to take a hit because most of the time you're only rendering 1080p. So just as you would expect from an Xperia phone, battery life definitely gets me through the day without any problems at all. The last thing I want to speak about a smidge is the camera quality. This is a 23 megapixel camera. Now, I think that the quality of the camera was overhyped quite a bit. I don't want to say by who. First, the interface is still bulky and cluttered and a little bit confusing, and photo quality has been kind of hit or miss. Sometimes it's really good, and I'm quite happy with it. Other times, I'm not sure what the exposure is going to do, and I'm not so happy with Sony's post-processing because I feel that it really takes away the detail of the image. Underneath low lighting, I also really did not like the purplish appearance that you would see in dark areas. Still, at least for video, I think this has got the best image stabilization algorithm that I have seen. This does not have optical image stabilization, but Sony does kick butt with it. This is 1080p, 30 frames per second. Walking briskly. So this is a good camera, definitely, but it's not the best mobile camera on the market like I saw it hyped to be. So no doubt, this is a great smartphone. It's a good performing smartphone, and I am really encouraged by this display, at least the potential that it has. I'm excited to see other phones come out with 4K on the market. I never thought that I would say that, but it's just something totally different when you can't see pixels anymore at all, and when you can see content that is very high resolution, it just pops out of the screen at you. It just feels so much like real life. It's almost uncanny. I don't think that everyone is going to be able to tell the difference, but for those who can, I think that having a 4K display is worth it. If you have the option to mess with the resolution settings especially, just say you could go between 1080p, 1440p, 4K, Ultra HD, that would definitely be a boon so that you could enjoy content as you see fit, and you wouldn't have to worry about battery life because, well, you can knock down the resolution when you need to. So thank you everybody for watching. This has been Erica, the technology nerd who likes to film stuff. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to be giving this away, so please watch out for that video. And it's going to be an international giveaway as well. Let me know what you guys think about 4K. I'm actually pretty excited about it. Leave me your comments, and good night.